Good morning and welcome to Horeca Magazine's first webinar. Today's topic of conversation asks, what are we doing to welcome guests? Like most of the world, Malta came to a near standstill from March until June, courtesy of COVID-19. We, like many other European destinations, have begun to reopen. Our airport dusted its runways on the 1st of July and commercial flights resumed. Not at pre-lockdown levels, of course, but it was a start. And on the 15th of July, 2 weeks ago, the airport green-lighted more points of origin. In fact, according to data released by the airport operator, some 84,000 passengers passed through MIA in the first 3 weeks of July. Not bad, considering it was a reboot, if you will, but a far cry from 392,000 movements in July 2019. With the airport and seaport open again, what is our hospitality sector doing safely to welcome this new influx of guests? This morning, we have 4 panelists to discuss this question. Tom Bunko, who is Managing Director of UK-based Yellow Railroad Limited, an international destination consultancy which helps destinations improve their competitiveness through branding, marketing, destination management, planning, and crisis recovery. Tom is a former Chief Executive of Visit Scotland and International Manager for Visit Britain, and his clients list spans the globe. He's also an author, honorary professor at Edinburgh's Heriot-Watt University, and lectures at international conferences, universities, and business schools. Tom authored the definitive handbook on tourism destination branding, published by the UNWTO and the European Travel Commission. Also here is Joseph Galea. Joe is founder of the consultancy JG Tourism Solutions that he set up in September 2018. Joe is a veteran of the tourism industry and has had a successful career in both destination marketing and aviation. He was based in Frankfurt for more than 20 years as Director of International Marketing for the Malta Tourism Authority until August 2014, when he joined Air Malta. Initially as Deputy Chief Commercial Officer, before being appointed CEO in August 2016. Joe left the airline at the end of summer 2018 to set up JG Tourism Solutions, which offers consultancy services to airlines, handling agencies, conference centers, and hotels. Our third panelist is Carlo Micallef, who is Chief Marketing Officer and Deputy CEO at the Malta Tourism Authority. He's also Chairman of the Board of Governors at the Institute of Tourism Studies. Carlo joined the MTA, then the MTOM, in 1997 and held several positions in the authority's marketing director, both at its head office and abroad. In the last 10 record-breaking years for tourism, Carlo has held senior positions in the marketing directorate and was appointed Chief Marketing Officer in 2014. Carlo has led changes to restructure the MTA's marketing setup, new branding for the authority, and to launch geographically planned but segmented focused advertising and PR campaigns in traditional source markets, as well as in new markets. These changes certainly bore fruit, and the islands enjoyed year-on-year growth in arrivals and tourism income, and saw great improvement in the seasonality spread. I'd also like to welcome Claire Zamit-Schwer, who is Hospitality Director of the AX Group. Claire has been in the hospitality business for more than 30 years and has a keen eye in being able to spot and identify underserved gaps in the market and convert them into successful businesses. Today, as Hospitality Director of the AX Group, Claire oversees a portfolio of 7 hotels, 17 restaurants, including the recently awarded Michelin star Under Grain in Valletta. Claire sits on the executive board of the AX Group and is chairperson of the AX Foundation. The foundation is devoted to supporting people living with invisible learning disabilities, with its primary focus being on the autism spectrum. He's also held various positions on the MHRA Council, the ITS Board of Governors, and sat on the board of the Malta Community Chess Fund. Here in spirit is Malta's Minister for Tourism and Consumer Protection, Mrs. Julia Farrugia Portelli. The Minister regrets that she's unable to participate in person, because of a prior engagement. However, she has sent us this pre-recorded video that I'll now play. So bear with me while I click this on.
It is today nearly a month since we opened Malta's ports to tourism travel, first to a limited list of 22 countries on the 1st of July, then to a further 28 countries 15 days later. As we all anticipated, and same as it is with our competitors, it has been a slow start when compared to the numbers we have been accustomed to in recent years. Nonetheless, I'm happy to note that demand for Malta and Gozo is still there, and all in all, first month is proving to be better than many expected. During the lockdown months of the pandemic, the Ministry and MTA kept active and engaging with PR campaigns going in all markets that we had flight connectivity from. These campaigns, driving the message "Dream Malta now, travel later," have proved to be effective, and we now see the benefit that Malta and Gozo have been kept on top of mind with tour operators, airlines, travel agents, as well as the general public. In addition to these campaigns, we kept open channels with trade partners both in Malta and also abroad, and the several online meetings and webinars that we held or participated in provided us with very useful insights to developing trends that shall shape up our strategy and marketing plans in the weeks and months ahead. It is today common knowledge that the pandemic has reshaped the way that we live, think, and make decisions. Consumer buying behavior in the tourism industry is no exception. The traveler of today is seeking safety, security, and a holiday experience to make memories with loved ones. If anything, COVID-19 has taught us to live the moment and cherish good times with friends and family. One of the strongest messages that we are putting across in all markets is the excellent way that Malta has managed COVID-19. The praise and endorsement by the Commonwealth General Secretary, who described Malta's response to COVID-19 for being the best in the whole of Europe, and the tweet by WHO Regional Director for Europe, who mentioned Malta as an example to follow, are at this time definitely the key in the PR and advertising messages that MTA is sending out in our source markets. However, this alone is not enough, as once the tourists visit our islands, they expect that the basic principles of social distancing, hygiene, and wearing of masks or visors where required are observed. We cannot put our guard down, and in this sense we shall continue insisting on the message with educational campaigns and also enforcement wherever necessary. Security and safety are today a very important factor that influence the choice of holiday destination that prospective holiday makers are booking. COVID-19 has also reshaped the way and means we promote our islands abroad. More and more of our target audiences in foreign markets are now online and actively following and engaging in digital media, including media throughout the day. Less money is going into purchase of newspapers, magazines, and other print media. Much more of our advertising budget is already going in advertising and PR activity on digital media, radio, and TV. The technology of today allows us to specifically profile audiences that we wish to target and direct our message to chosen demographics residing within reach of airports that we have flight connectivity from. This scientific approach is the way forward, and we shall continue refining our message and activity to make the most effective use of the funds available. Yes, in some ways it is a new world post-COVID-19 pandemic, but one thing that I'm confident in also, with the benefit of the experience of the first month behind us, is that Malta and Gozo shall continue to attract the level and quality of tourism that the industry needs. Our mission is to continue to improve quality and yield as we grow the numbers to the levels that make our industry operations profitable again. Together, we shall succeed once again.
Well, thank you, Minister, for your remarks. And I'd like to turn to Carlo Micallef. Carlo, whilst the country was effectively closed between March and June, and I know from what the Minister said, you and your colleagues at the MTA spent the time planning for a reopening of the islands and the tourism industry. Mrs. Farrugia Portelli touched on what went on in your offices, but more specifically, how did you crystal ball gaze? What conclusions did you reach? How do you market a destination like ours in a post-COVID world? What do you prioritize? And what do you focus your international marketing on?
Hello, Terence, and good morning to everyone joining us this morning. As the Minister mentioned, we did not stop functioning during the close down of the pandemic, and between March and June, we used our time to keep in contact with our partners overseas. All of our partners overseas. It was important that Malta keeps on top of mind, both with the trade as well as the public. And if I'll have the opportunity, I'll show some of the activities that we did during that period. But during that time, we also participated in a number of webinars, as well as had one-to-one talks, obviously on the web, with our key partners in the different markets. And during that time, we could see developing trends, which allowed us to plan for the time when the airport opened again in July. And the trends that we saw in all markets was that the first people to travel are those who are young, energetic, with that need to travel to get away from everyday life. They go away on short breaks, they are active, healthy, and that was the first target audience that our marketing post COVID-19, or after we opened our routes to several destinations, started with. We targeted the 21 to 35 age group, traveling in couples or solo travelers, or small groups that know each other very well, because the fear of the virus is there, and people tend to stick to those people that they can trust, that they know they are healthy. So we targeted the couples, solo travelers, and small groups of friends that travel together several times a year. Following that, with school holidays, we started targeting the school holiday period, although schools were closed for a number of months. We started targeting families with children. And keeping in mind the type of product that we can offer, we target those with children in their teenage years, not toddlers. The main markets that we targeted was Europe, and it was progressively targeting the routes that were being opened on health authorities' advice. So the first group of countries included the German-speaking markets, Sicily, we had some parts of the Eastern Europe, and then we progressed in 15 days later to the list of 50 countries, from which we target around 40, because there are a number of countries in the list of 50 which we do not get tourism from, or which we include in other countries. For example, there is mention of Vatican City, we see that, and San Marino, we see that as part of Italy. Our focus is to promote Malta with its characteristics of alfresco dining, lots of outdoor activities, sightseeing outside, not only inside museums, the attractions that we have around the island, sunny and safe, as the Minister mentioned, we use a lot the endorsements that Malta received from the Commonwealth General Secretary, Baroness Scotland, and from the UN WTO Regional Secretary, who commended Malta for best handling COVID-19. So we're pushing in that target audience, direct flight connections from the main source markets, and targeting the younger generation, say up to 55. I still fit in that category. The younger who feel healthy and they have the need to travel.
I know it's a bit too soon. We're only at the end of July, but do you have any demographics yet of sort of the age groups of people who've arrived, or is it still a bit too early to?
It's a bit too early. We have our surveys going on. We're waiting for NSO to come up with the first statistics for the month of July. Those should be in hand in about 2 weeks, 3 weeks time, I think. It depends on the way they're working with now. Reduced flight connectivity and much smaller numbers. We'll have to have the right sample for the survey to be attendable. But the feeling is that we're getting a lot of what we target. The younger, active, those with a lust for travel. And those are the people that are adventurous and are traveling already to our islands. Keeping in contact with the tour operators and travel agencies abroad, we see a very big interest for Malta. And the interest is across the board. It's not for one sector only. There's a big surge in searches for Malta. It has been reported even in the UK media and in the Express. When one sees that Malta has surpassed Spain with searches on the internet for a holiday, and that was before the UK imposed the latest restrictions on travel to Spain. It shows that our message is reaching across to the public and to the trade, and Malta is really on top of mind. And it shows that what we did in the past 6 months is bearing fruit.
Thank you. Let's move to Tom in Edinburgh. Tom, you've had a global experience in selling destinations. Consequently, you're uniquely placed to see the situation from various perspectives. Admittedly, the situation the world finds itself in today is not any one of us ever dreamed of would happen. What would you recommend, be your recommendations for Mediterranean destination like Malta? Should we go the mass tourism route again or be more selective in our marketing strategies?
Well, good morning and thank you. I'm honoured to be invited to join you. Thank you very much. And can I also say, I think we sit here and admire how Malta's handled the COVID pandemic so far. It's not really for me to tell Malta what I think you should do. On the other hand, I'm happy to look at some possible opportunities. I think mass market is a very emotive term, and I would rather say every destination, and particularly island destinations, I think need a diverse range of tourism markets so that you have a protection against one market collapsing and another booming. So I think, and you do have quite a diverse range of business in Malta. Is there an opportunity with post-COVID to increase the proportion of higher spending visitors? I think the answer probably is yes. Will you get the same volume? Will any of us get the same volume back in the next couple of years? Probably not. Social distancing will be a real challenge, I think, for a lot of businesses, for a lot of destinations. So we will not, I think, be able to pack as many people in as we have in many countries in the past. Were you starting from scratch, or were you a different kind of island like Santorini or Mykonos? I might be saying, well, go for a really upmarket brand because you don't need as many visitors. But you have nearly, well, over a quarter of your GDP is dependent on tourism. So you have a massive number of family businesses spread over all the islands. So I think you do need that diversity, which ranges from across different market segments. And one point I'd like to make there is that when you talk about mass market or diversity or quality, quality is really important at every level. Mass market can still be quality. I think there is an issue around what we see in the Caribbean, all-inclusive resorts, for instance, which are about affordability. On the other hand, if people stay in the resort, they don't go out and spend in the family-owned restaurants and bars and businesses and take excursions. So you do need that diversity, I think, of people who are going to spend in different types of place. But I do think there's an opportunity to always, in a situation like this, to improve the quality so that you attract higher spending visitors. But bear in mind, you're an island, so you need the volume, you need the airlift. I once made a rather naive mistake when I was working in the Caribbean many years ago, and I said, well, shouldn't we be looking at boutique hotels? And my colleague said, get a life, he said, how can you attract the amount of airlift that you need to get planes flying from a few boutique hotels? Now, I know you've got from 5-star to B&Bs to Airbnb and everything else. You've got a lot more already, so you have it there. But I don't think Malta will ever be in the situation of what Costa Brava or the Costa del Sol were, of being able to attract that kind of volume of beach tourism. It's not, neither in terms of the beach offer nor the flight time do you have that opportunity, I don't think. So I think you do need, just to reiterate, that diversity of markets. And I would think it's an opportunity to push the quality up, or the proportion of higher spending visitors up, which you have done, I think, quite successfully over the years. And I'm a big fan of what MTA has done. I've known MTA and seen them operating in international markets for a lot of years, and I have a lot of respect for them.
Okay. Thanks. On the question of volume, Carlo, can I just ask you, earlier this month, the Tourism Ministry forecast 700,000 arrivals this year. Can you see us achieving this?
We're pushing all the way to achieve that. Of course, there are many unknowns, and even the air schedules, the flight schedules to Malta, they're not confirmed beyond September. Airlines are operating in a scenario that is changing every day. So that's our target. We'll push all the way to reach and surpass that target. But there are many unknowns that can affect positively or negatively our performance. But that is our target, yes, to reach it.
Claire, you represent a good cross-section of the local hospitality industry, the management of the hotels ranging from 5-star boutique properties in Valletta, 4 stars in popular resorts, not to mention the restaurants dotted around the island. I think we all know the answer to this one, but in your words, how badly did the lockdown affect your hotels and F&B outlets? And then a second part of the question is, now with the reopening of our borders and the rebooting of the tourism industry, how did you prepare your hotels and restaurants for the new normal? What tangible changes and/or protocols have you had to introduce?
So, good morning, Terence. Thank you for your invitation. I will gladly answer. We, as AX Hotels, employ 800 people. So you can just imagine the effect that had when COVID struck. It was, to our industry, the most horrible times in my career that I could ever recall, and in many too. So what we did, we obviously did not fire anybody, but those 800 now dwindled to some 120 people. Why? Because you have the medically vulnerable people, you have the part-timers, you have the contractors, and then you have people that are semi-retired and decided to retire. So that number shrank to a few people that are today part of the core team and that were ready to do all to surpass this period. And in this time, I restructured AX Hotels completely, to the extent where now we centralized all of our functions. Our core team is very small compared to how it was before. So we are now more agile, lighter, in order to move according to the market, because the market is still very bleak. So you need to be very agile to move with it. If you're too heavy on the top, then you won't make it. But this also gave room to our people to excel in the areas that they are good at. When before we had 4 accounts departments, now we have 1 finance department, but each of those individuals are now on a group level. So it gave room for their own personal growth in their career. It also allowed us to have more of a uniform front as AX Hotels, because last year we rebranded. So I'm looking at all the positive things that we have done in this time to prepare us for what's to come. In terms of guidelines for sanitization, etc., of course, we followed all of the guidelines. This was the first thing that we've done, the 72-page document. We've also identified hotspots throughout the properties and the public areas and in the rooms. We intensified the cleaning. We also made a core team, like a task force for COVID, which each members in each department responsible just for this, not just on this, but wholly on this COVID procedures, the new procedures, because it changed the way we do business. And we took record of everything too. So in case we have to backtrack something, it will enable us to follow what exactly happened. The more structured you are, the more organized, the better you are to confront a situation like this and to be consistent. People need that because they become insecure, both from an internal customer point of view, from an employee point of view, as well as from a client point of view. So this gives a lot of security to people when they see that things are in order. And it gives confidence in the market as well. With regards to market segments, yes, we cater for a variety of people within the market. We have resorts, we have boutique hotels, we have the city hotels. From my experience so far, the Aura properties have done relatively better. Slima properties in line, seconded, and lastly, Valletta. Obviously, this reflects the higher spend and the lower spend. But it does not mean that if you lower your rates, the business will come. We have experienced this, and it is not the case. So it is more a case of building the confidence. And as Carlo mentioned, we are now attracting a different segment of the market in terms of age. So one needs to revise your strategies constantly to reflect what is happening out there. And in terms of the future, I can't agree more with Tom, that we have a great opportunity to reposition ourselves in the market to attract a higher spend, a crowd that is willing to spend more money for more exclusivity. Anyways, Malta's infrastructure is small. I am not saying that we replace this with the business we have already. We have done a lot and that should stay. But this is a new segment which we can attract, and this also will allow us not to depend on a few, but on a bigger variety. We are also very, we have a lot of history. We have a lot of attributes that add value to this particular segment of the market. And now is the time that we are relatively quieter and have more time to think strategically.
You mentioned a change in the age demographics of your guests. What, they become younger, older, or?
Younger.
Younger.
At the moment, it's a much younger crowd. All throughout, we've experienced this in all of the areas. With the exception, I would say, to Valletta.
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, with the exception to Valletta, but in general, it is much, much lower crowd, lower age.
Okay, so basically what Carlo was talking about, targeting the 25 to 35 age group, one would say.
Being reflected.
Okay, thank you.
Those are the people that are traveling around the world. The senior citizens are holding back, not only to Malta, but also in other destinations.
Yeah, I'm staying at home too.
But also families. Families are also staying back.
Yes, yes.
By the younger group.
Mm-hmm.
Are out there.
The families, there's another reason for that. Schools in Europe are having their exams later on this summer. The exams that did not happen in May or June are being done hopefully in September. And they're holding back from traveling. They're short of holiday leave also, because many parents had to take up their holiday leave, not working from home. So they went on holiday leave, and the family market is suffering in that sense.
Thank you. Joe, if I get you. You're uniquely placed here as having worked at both the MTA and Air Malta. And over the years, you've no doubt seen crises of varying magnitude. None, I'm sure, as devastating as this pandemic. In your view, how should hotels and other suppliers face the current crisis? And what changes do you see in the customer journey to purchase? What do you think needs to be done differently to attract business?
Good. So, good morning, everyone. Crisis. Yeah, tourism, I think it's normal when you work in tourism to face crisis. It is an industry which is immediately affected by any changes, any crisis, any things which are out of the norm. But we also know when we work in tourism that the industry is resilient and it always comes back. The question is, when will it come back, and and how will it come back, in which form will it come back? One thing that we need to accept, or we need to understand, is that crisis will bring change. So let us not think that what we did so successfully until last February or March, we can do again now come July, August, and it will give us the same results we had before. I think one change that we need to see and we need to accept is that I would say for the last years, there was, I would call it a carefree attitude to book your holidays. It was so easy to book a holiday, flights were cheap. You can decide, we go on holiday, just go on the internet, you book your hotel, you book your flights, and you're done. Probably planning a Sunday picnic with the family took even longer planning time. Today, I think it's not so easy, and not so easy, not because the platforms are not there, it's because people have hesitation. Before, they had no hesitation. Once you decided you had the time and the money, you just went ahead and booked your holiday. Now there's hesitation. I would say there's probably a very strong emotional hesitation. Emotional, do I need this holiday? Does it fall into what people are calling this non-essential travel? Is it safe for me to travel? Is it safe for me to take my children with me? I mean, both Carlo and Claire mentioned there's an absence of families. Families are traveling, but they're traveling with the car. They're getting into the car in Europe, in Germany, or in France, traveling 200-300 kilometers away and going for a break with their family. But getting the family onto a plane, getting the family to a hotel, it's not so easy because there's a barrier that you need to overcome. You need to get the confidence that it's the right thing to do. Then I would say there's also the financial uncertainty. I mean, many people have suffered some financial loss to their earnings. They've had less earnings in the last months, either because they were furloughed or they lost on bonuses or commissions, or some of them even have the fear of what the future might bring. I mean, people talk about the second pandemic. So if I've managed to survive the first few months, will I survive the next one? So I would say when we promote our hotel, our destination, there are these two major concerns, the emotional concern and the financial concern that we have to address. Claire was very clear when she mentioned protocols. Protocols are important, and I think people are asking what are the hotels doing to safeguard the health of the hotel, of the staff, of the guests. And I would say, while in the past, most of the cleaning and sanitizing was done, I would say, away from the eyes of the guest, I would even say now it's good to do it in front of the guests. Why? Because the guest needs to know. I mean, it's not knowing that it's done, it's actually seeing that it is done. Then I think we also need to look at the flexibility of booking. Most properties, and Claire can tell us, are far away from a full occupancy. So give people the flexibility of booking so they can cancel should something happen, some news which makes them more uncomfortable to travel. Of course, the flexibility in booking also depends on the platforms you use. There are certain platforms, for example, booking.com, which is popular for everyone to book their hotels, but it is notorious for the amount of last-minute cancellations, for the amount of no-shows, mainly based on its type of booking, where it actually encourages you to secure your hotel and you pay later. So people feel very comfortable in securing their hotel and paying later. I believe Booking.com in the past had about 40% globally of no-shows or last-minute cancellations. At the other extreme, then you have the classical tour operator, where bookings tend to be, I would say, a bit more secure, less cancellations. And if I can advise anyone, I would say that the classical tour operator and the travel agent always have a resurgence in demand after any crisis. After a crisis with the financial crisis, even when Thomas Cook went bust last October, November, you might think that people will shy away from tour operators. Actually, it gave travel agents a resurgence in demand in many countries. And I would say travel agents would, in a situation like this, where you need a face and a name to talk to, should you need to cancel or change your travel plans, I would say they do have a USP that many other direct booking channels, online booking channels, don't have. And then it's also an opportunity to push your own hotel website. I mean, it's where you talk to people, where you can give all the flexibility people want, where you can command the best revenue for your hotel, and any client you get over your hotel website is your client, and he will remain your client all the time, because it's not like a booking that comes through a platform, through an operator, and you only know a family name and the date of arrival and the date of departure. What we can see probably in the future, or rather now, is a very short booking journey. The time between the day you book your flight and the day you take your flight are going to be much shorter, because people will leave it till the very last minute to book, should anything happen that might change their travel plans. This does not mean that people will not be planning. I would say, yes, people are planning, and Carlo said searches in the UK for Malta are at an all-time high, because people have this lust for holidays, people want to travel. So the planning period will be, I would say, quite long, but while before we used to have a short planning period and the long period between the date of booking and the date of travel, we will now have a long planning period, but between your date of booking and the date of travel, you only have a few days. And this is reflected even when you speak to tour operators. They tell you we have a lot of inquiries, we have a lot of interest, but bookings are only slowly coming in. It's because people need to have the confidence that, yes, they can travel. And I would say confidence is probably the most important factor. Claire mentioned, and I agree with her 100%, price is not the determinant. Price, yes, could maybe have moved some business. Price could have moved business in the past, but this is not the past. This is a new time that we're facing, and let's be realistic. If we, as Malta, want to play with the price, competing destinations can play much better with the price. Our costs are what they are. Our costs are not as cheap as some of the North African competitors. So if we play with the price, ultimately we're only harming ourselves, because they can always go lower than us. And when you push your price down to a certain level, it's easy, extremely easy, but it's difficult to push the price up again. Let's be realistic. It is not a short-term gain we want. We want a sustainable long-term development. And sustainable long-term development means understanding our guests, getting their trust, getting their confidence, and moving on.
Thanks very much. Bit on the subject, hotels. At an MHRA last week, it was said that just 6% of hoteliers believe the tourism industry will recover from the fallout of COVID-19 before the end of this year. And what seems a confirmation of this, just yesterday it was reported that several hotels do not plan to reopen until next March. In the same article, you are quoted as saying that although you're opening all your properties, you are, and I quote you, are being very selective on the wings we open to keep the costs as low as possible, unquote. My question is this: how do you see the hotel sector shaping up in the next 6 to 9 months? Do you feel we'll see some permanent closures?
Difficult question. If only I knew it all, I would say. But my prediction is that it's going to be a very tough winter. Look, to start with, where we are doing relatively well, I believe, because we are positioned in the market in terms of safety vis-a-vis COVID in a very good position. I believe that we should communicate this much, much more in order to ride on it. But besides that, with regards to operation, I think it's going to be very difficult this winter, and I believe, yes, that possibly there will be hotels, including restaurants, that will close, some probably temporary and some possibly permanently because of the difficult financial situation. Definitely the government has helped immensely, and I believe that there still needs help from government until March, April next year, because it's going to be very, very hard for the industry. In terms of how to survive, one needs to be extremely agile, very dynamic to move with the market, because if you are too heavy, you cannot move as fast as that, you know? So when I say, yes, we will operate all the properties, but selectively. In the wintertime, maybe not. At the moment we are, and we are seeing a fairly good August. But you have to be very selective in which rooms you're going to operate, because once you open the chiller, that's it. You can go bust. So you need to be extremely selective in terms of which wings to open to retain your cost as low as possible so you can move with the market. Because if your fixed costs are too high, you cannot compete. This is in the weakest of markets I'm talking about, in wintertime. But come April next year, I believe that business will start getting a little bit normal, back to normality. The year after, much, much better. And then I believe the year after that will be a big boom.
Thank you. Tom, you touched on the question of mass marketing and quality over quantity. Now, the argument about quality over quantity has been trashed out countless of times. Now, how do you achieve that happy medium where one satisfies the hoteliers who just, as Claire was pointing out, you know, having their beds filled and not overcrowding a destination? Do you think COVID-19 has sorted this one out for us, or?
Who knows? I think what we've seen, I'm not saying in Malta, but in certain places you've seen one of the biggest problems of tourism before COVID was over-tourism. Suddenly overnight, we've gone to under-tourism. And so the challenge is not how do we manage the places to how do we get people back. I would like to think that we have an opportunity to get the right kind of tourism back to many destinations now. We're not going to, as I said earlier, get the volume, partly because of the fear of flying or the fear of traveling amongst certain segments. Also, because people still want to social distance, as Joe's very, very clearly pointed out, the safety, the hygiene is a big issue. So I think it gives us the opportunity to go more for quality than quantity in the future. And as I said, to increase the proportion of higher spending visitors. It's a bugbear of mine, I have to say, having run a national tourism organization, having worked for many, and I see around the world, and forgive me, Terence and Carlo, but you see the media, government ministers and tourism boards love to talk about the number of people, the number of legs that have flown into the country. I understand that, but actually what we should be focusing on is not volume, but value. How much are these people spending? What are they bringing? Of course, as I say, we have to have diverse people spending different amounts, so they don't just spend in 5-star hotels and stay there all the time, but they do go out to restaurants and take excursions and visit attractions and so on. But I do think COVID's given us this opportunity to both reset the argument over quality versus quantity, because we'll be forced to. In terms of ecological impact, I think COVID's done what Greta Thunberg couldn't do. You know, we've actually reduced the numbers for a while. Willie Walsh, the head of IAG and British Airways, has said he doesn't expect to see volume, the numbers come back till about 2023. IATA is talking about 2024. So we have real challenges for the immediate future. And I think another aspect of quality is destination management. You know, we have an opportunity to say, what type of tourism do we want? That means, what do we offer? How do we protect and how do we project our destination? What do we build? What restrictions do we put in place in terms of high-rise buildings or zoning? What will we allow where, and what will we encourage where? I'm a huge fan of destination management, because I think so many destinations around the world have not done it well. They've just said more, and I was one of those guys when I worked for a tourist board. More, because that's what people wanted, that's what the industry wanted, the hotels, the minister. But those days have got to end. We've got to look for quality. We've got to look for higher spend. But importantly, I think one other change is we've got to listen to what the people on the ground want in the communities, in terms of what kind of tourism is sustainable and reasonable, that allows them to survive, rather than just piling more in and destroying their environment. I mean, you have many of us, Venice, Barcelona, Amsterdam are the poster children for over-tourism. But even in Malta, I think you have something like 6 visitors to every citizen. So those are ratios that I think need to be thought about. And of course, you've got seasonality that affects that. You need more in winter and less in summer, and so on. Huge number of issues, but I think it comes down to really managing the destination, focusing on value, and targeting the type of visitor that you know will provide the type of tourism that your people want in your communities.
Point noted about value as opposed to numbers, but Carlo, if I ask you, the government not very long ago was considering the idea of issuing prepaid cards as a way to encourage more tourists to the islands. Can you shed more light on that? Talk about it.
Well, mentioning quality and numbers, I think it's a fine balance to find the volume, to get the volume paying the right price. It's not easy, but that is what we are all after. And in the sense that, going back to our history at MTA, Joe was part in the team with Joe, there are a number of operators, a number of clients, a segment of clients that is no longer coming to Malta because Malta is out of their reach. So we've been pushing up the quality of our tourism over the years, and we moved away from competing on price, as Joe well said, with North African countries. It is not the solution to lower price beyond lower than what we can afford. So, and in terms of quality, I think quality should be across all levels. We need to attract a tourist that is ready to pay a higher price for staying in a 3, 4, 5-star hotel. So we want better quality across the board. And in terms of quality, we need to really understand, we really need to make up our minds what we mean by it. Is it what they pay? Is it what they're after? Is it the motivation of their holiday? So because we speak of quality, and most of the time, it equates with the rate they pay or the amount of money they spend in the destination. There is quality tourism that does not go to five-star hotels. There is quality tourism that travels on a budget. So we really need to make up our mind what we mean by quality tourism. But having said that, our mission is to attract a higher spending tourist across all categories. Going back to this prepaid vouchers, of course, we're not giving vouchers to everyone that is coming to our islands. It's a PR initiative. Yes, we're giving away a number of vouchers, 100 euros per tourist. There's a limited number, but it is more a PR strategy rather than paying for their holiday. We'll be launching activities in the different markets, especially the core markets, where we'll see that there will be best connectivity to our islands, and use it as a part of our marketing activity, engaging with people and asking them to engage with Malta and keep it on top of mind with the general public. So it's not really paying for holidays, but it's more of a PR stunt to be on top of mind.
Are these similar to the vouchers that the residents have received?
I did not receive them, no.
Well, the ones who have received them, it's similar to that concept.
No, the concept will be we'll be launching activity on social media and asking questions. We're still finalizing the campaign, but asking questions, what made you choose Malta, or why should you get this voucher, and tell us how we're going to spend it. This will allow us to expose the product that Malta can offer, because people will be telling us, I'll spend it on a diving course, I'll spend it visiting the museums, I'll spend it in staying in a boutique hotel in Valletta, I'll spend it in the nightlife in St. Julian's. This is something that will allow us to promote the diversity of our product, because the people will be answering in different ways, and then we'll be choosing the winners from different destinations.
Okay, thank you. Joe, if I can turn to you. Yesterday, Tony Zara, chairman of the Hotels and Restaurant Association, said hoteliers are basing their reopening plans on airline seating capacity. Fair enough, a point you touched on earlier on. And he said, and I quote, seat capacity was down from last year to 27% this month, meaning July, 43% in August, 50% in September, and it's forecast to remain at that level between October and March. Now, the CEO of Malta Air, Dermot O'Connell, and apologies if I mispronounce his name, says, and I quote, there's a pent-up demand for travel in July and August, but it'll be a rough winter. Demand has taken a big hit, and it will take a bit of time to restore that. Both say essentially the same thing. As a former airline man, what is your take on the situation? What can the airlines do and or the destination to stimulate demand? Now, I mean, I was reading last night, for instance, Emirates have just introduced what I thought was a bit bizarre insurance. If you travel with them, they'll cover your, if you catch COVID on their flights, they'll cover your hotel bills, quarantine bills, hospital bills, and in the event of your death, they'll cover your funeral bills. I mean, that's pretty drastic. But what's your take on all this?
It doesn't inspire confidence, does it?
The opposite.
Which airline was that, Terence?
Emirates.
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 Okay.
I mean, when it comes to airline capacity, yeah, okay, people tell you it's easy for airlines to put more flights in the air. Yeah, and it is easy, but each hour flown comes at a high cost, at a very high cost. So airlines are rather careful about the number of flights they fly, the number of seats they float, because when they do not at least cover their variable costs, their direct costs of operating that flight, it makes more sense to keep the aircraft on the ground. And in many cases at the moment in time, For many airlines, it is less costly not to fly than to fly. They are only flying because it is their commitment to stimulate demand, to stimulate business, to give confidence to the industry, to try to regenerate the industry. I mean, at the end of the day, airlines are meant to fly, aircraft are meant to fly, so having aircraft parked, like we've seen in the last few months, is no one's joy. However, one thing we have to probably be careful, and I've seen this, I think, as a headline of an article in an interview with Ellen Arrigo, where he said that reopening is not recovery. And many people have mistaken the fact that we've reopened is that we have recovered. And I think there are totally two different things. Reopening is possibly the first step towards a recovery, but we all know that there are many things that have to come into play to make a recovery real, to make a recovery happen. There is the willingness that I want to travel, and there is the ability that I want to travel. And what the CEO of Malta Air is that there is pent-up demand. I agree that there is, yes, pent-up demand. But again, pent-up demand is not a sale. Pent-up demand is your wish, your desire to do something, but do I have the ability to do it? I have the willingness to travel. I have the willingness to get onto a plane or to go on holiday. But do I have the ability? Do I have, and again, I go to the emotional ability and the financial ability. There are two different things. And to get people to travel will be a long process, but it has to be a sustained process from us, the airlines and the industry, to keep showing people that yes, there is safety in travel, there is no risk, there are no problems. So the worst we can do is the start-stop attitude. Once we started, once we reopened, let's try to keep open, because opening and closing sends the wrong signals in the market. Winter, yes, winter will always be a problem. Winter was always a problem, even in the best of times, let alone now. And especially this year, I don't think we're going to see many groups coming over in winter, because social distancing in groups don't really go well together. We're not going to see much MICE business, because again, it doesn't go well together. We're not going to see many elderly traveling, because they are the vulnerable and they're going to be staying at home. And these are probably the segments which would keep us busy in a normal winter, because in a normal winter, you have less people coming for normal vacations, for normal, regular sun and sea. You have some culture-driven people, but many of these do travel in groups. So we come back to the same situation, though groups are traveling in winter. Before we say rather, what can we do for winter? I would say we need to understand the concerns why winter will be more difficult this year. People fear the hype that the media is talking about, the second wave coming in winter. There is no insurance. I mean, and I do understand Emirates' angle, because many insurances are not offering you cover for COVID-19 now. Many employers don't give you sick leave to quarantine, because now you know about it. Last March, you didn't know about it, but now you know about it. There's a threat of unemployment. If it comes again, do I still have a job? There's a threat of businesses closing down. So all of these are making people very, very, very uneasy. So again, I will call for flexibility. I will call for any measures that can be done to ensure that airline capacity, at least from key routes, is guaranteed. We need to be flexible, all of us, airlines, hotels, whatever it is, for change requests. Let's not make changes complicated for people. Let us also keep in mind that there are people who booked trips for May and for June and for April who are still waiting for their refunds. So will they trust us again with their deposits? So let's make change request bookings as flexible as possible. Let us give people peace of mind. Let us show them that there are less contact points, human contact points, because we tend to fear that human contact points give us the virus. Our marketing, I would say, has to change from an image building type of marketing to a reassurance type of marketing. from a hard sell based on price to, I would say, an emotional sell. We have to understand that the planning process is going to be long. So we need to be engaging with our clients, our potential clients, all the time, because we don't know at which point they will book, or they will book very late, but their planning is going to be quite a long one. So we need to be active in the market. We need to engage. We need to use social media. We need to use our website. We need to use CRM. We need to use classical advertising, because people are out there. They want to travel, but we need to be present to engage with them and get them to travel to us as and when they decide to.
Thank you. So on the question of social distancing, etc., Tom, I read your very interesting piece on tourism after COVID-19, Dodo or Phoenix. Now, in it, you write about the contradictions, travel and tourism, depending on proximity between people. In a post-COVID world, we require social distancing between fellow travelers and suppliers, de-densification, as you call it. Now, naturally, this will affect business models and overall pricing, which is something Joe just mentioned as well. Do you envisage that the price of travel will only be affordable by the better off in the future? I mean, taking into account what Joe was just talking as well.
I think that's a really big question. I think there's an inevitability. Some of that will happen. The costs are going up, as Joe has talked about. The costs, just the volume of, just think of what airports and airlines are having to buy in terms of protective equipment and hand sanitizer, and the application of that, the longer time it takes, the less people that you can cram in, forgive me for using the phrase, but cram into a visitor attraction. Let's take the Sistine Chapel in Rome might now be a much more attractive experience because you have to social distance and you don't cram in with lots of other people, but you reduce the numbers. Restaurants, I don't know about in Malta, but here there are spaces between, you're probably going to have half the number of people in a restaurant you used to have. That means a lot of restaurants are just not viable. So I think we're going to see, as Claire and Joe have said, I think we will see quite a number of businesses going out of business for this reason. However, I think we will see clever ones survive. How they will be clever, we don't exactly know, but a lot of people have revised their business models to do takeaway, more al fresco dining. Sadly, I think it's almost inevitable a lot of travel prices will increase, but I think tour operators and travel operators, I should say, will try really hard to keep the prices reasonable because they have to get a reasonable degree of volume, which is necessary. So it's a juggling act. I would hate to think that what I call the democratization of travel, where it has become much more accessible to many more people, will be reversed. But I think inevitably we'll see a lot of higher prices. I don't know if you're going to ask me any more questions, but I wanted to sort of bring at a positive angle to this, because we are going to face tough times. As Joe said, the winter is going to be tough. We have a lot of uncertainty. We may have more spikes. I'd like to call it spikes rather than a second wave, because I think we're seeing that in different places. Malta has done really well, but I think Malta has a real opportunity in in three areas. I think you have an enormous appeal. You're sort of, the second time I went to Malta, I realized what a quintessential Mediterranean island you are, and never underestimate that island character. And you have the warmth, which a lot of those of us who live in the cooler climes of northern Europe are looking for, and sun. But what a lot of people don't realize is just how much heritage and the range of heritage and culture you have in Malta. I was surprised, I think, when I actually got to see Malta properly some years ago. Most people I know who've come back from Malta, or everyone I know has come back from Malta, I said, wow, didn't realize there's so much. And when we're talking about quality, as I think several people have said, it's quality at every level. You have Michelin star restaurants, but you also have, one of my most memorable memories of Malta is sitting having a fish dinner al fresco at Marshalslot. And don't forget, as I say, for those of us living again in Northern Europe, the idea of eating al fresco is a very appealing one in the warmth. The second element, I think, is safety. You have a good, so far you've done really well on that. Joe's mentioned the need to communicate or be seen to clean. That's a great line, isn't it? Be seen to clean. But many destinations like Singapore are actually incorporating it in their marketing. It's a very, very sensitive thing. I know you've come up with your, I think you're safe to visit or safe and sunny or sunny and safe campaign. It's very, very difficult line between saying we're safe and scaring people, and in subtle ways communicating how well you've done with managing COVID and how safe you are. So safety is going to be a real issue, and targeting the markets that are right for Malta, who will travel in the near future, who will behave responsibly, and who will spend money. But I do think Malta's got a fantastic appeal that's still not as, it's not known as widely for particularly its heritage in many Northern European destinations. In spite of the good work MTA has been doing, I think you've got so much to offer. And I would urge you to take confidence from those three things: the appeal, the safety, and the targeting the markets, the right markets.
Thank you. I think we're unfortunately overrun, but before we terminate, Claire, let's ask you one last question, if I may. Tom was mentioning about alfresco dining, Michelin star restaurants. Now, of course, at the end of February, one of your restaurants was awarded a Michelin star. And in a manner of speaking, it came at the wrong time because we went into lockdown immediately after. Now, since the reopening, are you experiencing a surge in reservations, pent-up curiosity for people to try the restaurants?
Yes, definitely. We have a 3-week waiting list.
Really?
But there again, it is a very high cost restaurant. So if you don't work cleverly, you will go under. So we're opening in the weekends. We are not opening during the week yet, but as the occupancies in Malta are increasing, from next week, I will start opening on a Thursday, Wednesday, and a Thursday, which will facilitate things with the operation as well. But even with a Michelin star restaurant, with a name like that, you still have to be meticulously careful on the cost vis-a-vis the revenue to make a margin.
I think we've overrun. Thank you all for your time. I do appreciate it. And thank you. Until the next one, hopefully.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Have a good day. Thanks.
Thank you. Good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.